This is the final video in the CiMPLE Journey, how someone with no experience gets to CiMPLE. And in the first video, we talked about a distributed ledger and used a receipt example that it basically makes it very, very difficult for anybody to come in with anything fraudulent that isn't part of that ledger. Bitcoin's ledger is basically sending tokens from A to B and then seeing what the balance of B is later, right? Or at any point in time, you can check the balance, but it's really just restricted to transferring the token of Bitcoin, right? Then smart contracts got introduced. Ethereum's really the big one that's doing it, but it's a series of if this then that rules that exist, which creates all sorts of applications. Like we talked about banking, which Aave uses. We talked about Ethereum and how it's moving proof of stake. We talked about wallets using MetaMask to transact with everything. We talked about the bridges. Now, real quick on the bridges, if you are buying assets to begin with, right? Like if you have US dollars and you're trying to get into ETH, then in the future, we will have something much easier, and I'll show you a graphic in a minute that sort of explains that. But for right now, you would have to go to something like Coinbase, and then you would send the assets to MetaMask, then you would use the bridge to transfer it into Polygon. That would be the process. In the future, it's all going to be easier to go directly into Polygon, right? So as soon as we can, we actually want to allow somebody to put in a debit card or credit card or whatever to just directly buy onto Polygon and skip that whole process. We think that's the simplest way to do it, but things need to happen in a certain order. And we talked about Instadapp. So remember, Instadapp is sort of the fallback tool. You kind of need it to start the account. You need it to get things going, but then you can use CiMPLE. And if for whatever reason you can't use CiMPLE because it's during construction and maybe things change, and I'll get into things that change. Like we had an update today. When I'm showing you this video, it's going to change how I do this video versus how I would have done the video yesterday, right? So there are things that change, and you can always just go back and do every single thing that you can, all the CiMPLE strategies, minus numbers 4 and 5, which is hodling CiMPLE tokens and staking those CiMPLE tokens for CMPG. The other strategies, besides fee-based insurance and our NFT. So 5 of the 9 strategies you can do on Instadapp. Let's put it that way. Let's get into CiMPLE real quick. And before I do that, I want to cover, this graph is from a book called Crossing the Chasm. And they describe the chasm as crossing this big gap between the early adopters and the early majority. And so this group of people are people who want the newest things. And this specifically is where we're at right now in innovators. We don't even have the minimum feature set. We are very, very close to the minimum feature set, but we are not there yet. And so open during construction, what does that mean? We are here, right? We don't even have the minimum feature set. We have things that can be done, right? But we don't have the minimum feature set completed yet. And so we will be transitioning into this period soon, but we also have designs and everything planned for what this will be later, right? So we're on that progress. Now, the tokenomics, because of us being in this situation and it being riskier and all of that, the CiMPLE tokenomics are going to favor the people that are in this category, right? So it is having faith when others don't. It is seeing the vision of what's going on and becoming a part of it. It is using the strategies to multiply your tokens and being rewarded additionally for using those strategies, right? And for being part of the community, spreading the word, bringing in other people, right? There's all things that you're rewarded for being part of the community at this early stage. But you also need to be aware it is during this early stage. It's open during construction. So if you are the type that says, hey, I only want to deal with a polished product that has a proven track record and list of criteria, guess what? You're in the early majority, right? You're in this section. You're not going to get the early tokenomics benefits, but that's who you are as a person, right? So you choose to be in this category, which is fine, right? Like this is only 15 or 16% of the entire market combined is going to fall into these two categories. And even then, the majority of that 16% is over here, not here, and we are here, right? So very, very early, tokenomics favor that, right? But that is where we're at, and so would rather be transparent. As we make these videos better, it will be based on being further along in this process, and eventually we will be here, and it'll make a lot more sense. So here is the prototype. Now, there's lots of things on this prototype that are not going to be there when we get further along, right? So definitely not here. Maybe a little bit of it here. Actually, definitely here. Yeah. So what we're doing is we are working on the prototype. When the prototype has its minimum feature set, then we establish that as we're done with this, right? Then the next thing we're going to do is start working on the final product solution. So right now, You have to create your account on Instadap. We don't even have that, right? Minimum feature set doesn't even include creating your own account. We don't have to. You can create your account on Instadap. So we need to focus on the other things that you can do once you have the account, right? The whole product solution means that you have to start your journey on CiMPLE, and you have to start like creating the account on CiMPLE as opposed to creating it on Instadap. And so things are going to change. It's going to be polished. So we're working on this, working on the prototype, pushing it to a certain point, saying, okay, these minimum feature sets are all done. And we're getting really close to that, by the way. But, you know, minimum feature set's done. Let's freeze, let's pause, and now let's work on the whole product solution. And that will be the next thing that we do. But this will be paused once we hit that minimum feature set. So let's look at where we are in that prototype journey. This is the prototype. And the update that got published today is that these buttons up here, Aave was added, but these buttons up here not only give you the current price, which was the case for months, it now subscribes to the price. So as prices are going up and down, this value right here is going to change, right? It just changed right now. And that is going to change the amount right here, which is how much you should buy right now, right? In terms of USD value and in terms of token quantities. So let me just cover all of this stuff. All of this is really just exposed so that us who are working on it can have the data to put into a spreadsheet in order to recreate the results or to make some changes. So one of the applications of that, for example, is that this is saying right now you've got 100 ETH and you have no debt and it's the first time you're buying, right? So we can take this, and this is the price changing, right? This is why I'm saying it affects things, but we can drag this to buy less. So let's do a fake buy right there and I'll show you what just happened, okay? So it did not buy the entire amount that I could have bought. I defined an intersection point. So let's talk about this intersection point. Actually, let's take a big step back. Okay, and there's other videos that explain this, but I feel like it needs to be incorporated in here, especially if you haven't watched those other videos yet. So along this side, you have the price, okay? You define when you start buying. By default, it is taking the all-time high, the historic max price, timesing that by 85%, and that is your start buy price. That is this little dot right there, okay? 0% loan to value, and that's the price, right? Then the next thing it does is it calculates a liquidation price. The default value, the liquidation price is over here, but the default value of it is 25% of this historic max price, right? And that puts that in there. Then you also have a stop buying price. So let's explain the difference real quick. Your liquidation price is if you took on the maximum amount of debt that you could. Okay, so that was the update that occurred today, so I can't show you that. If I was able to get this down to here, this gray dotted line tells you if I took that amount of debt, this is where it would liquidate later, right? So if I did that, but the current price was right here at the stop buy price, then this little gray dotted line would continue all the way here, which is the actual liquidation price. If you have 80% of debt, and so if it's at $12.50, 80% of $12.50 is $1,000. So what this blue line is saying is you can have $1,000 worth of debt per token. And it's not per token that you have starting out with, it's per token that you have after you buy, right? So you have this recursive debt where you can 5x your position at any given time, but this is saying you would 5x the position at this liquidation price, figure out, how much debt that is, and then spread it across the spectrum, right? So you define when you start buying, you define the liquidation price. So let's say you've got that $1,000 in a previous version of this prototype, the debt, that $1,000 worth of debt per token extended all the way down to that liquidation price. We separated it out so that you could define separately how much, where you would liquidate, which determines how much debt you can have, and then separately define where that debt is spent so that you don't, let's say that you think the price will never go below the stop buy, and perhaps that is based on what the market did in the last cycle when it dipped. Not this most recent one a few days ago from the recording of this video, but the one several months ago, right? Didn't go below that point. And so maybe you think that it has no chance of going down to $12.50, but just in case it does, that's where you're prepared to get liquidated. So you put a price that you think it's not going to go, and you don't waste any of that $1,000 worth of debt between this 1684 and this 1250. If you're watching this video, I'm going to say that you're a novice in this. Leave it as the default value, don't change it. Simple recommendation. But what it's doing is saying if you have $1,000 worth of debt, half of that is 50% of 1,000 is 500. So where do you spend the first 500 by what price, and then the other 500 by the other price, right? And so by default, it's right in the middle. So if you have a price spectrum, you start buying here, you stop buying there. You have a gap between the two, halfway between the two, spend half the money. If you wanted to extend that debt a little bit further downwards, you could decrease this number. And if you want to spend the debt a little bit higher in that spectrum, you could raise the number. But here's something to be aware of. If I change this, and what happens, here's what I want to point out. We've got a negative A value here, which in a future, like look what it says, spend 50% of it turns red and it's telling you to go down. That is telling you went too far, because what would happen, basically you would end up taking on so much debt there that the two lines would not intersect, and you wouldn't be able to buy later if you mess up. So if it's a negative A value, we just put up this red thing and said, okay, that's too much. In the future, we're gonna adjust how we do this. This version right here, it's not gonna be done like that. That's just something we're doing for now. Amount of tokens is based on how many tokens you actually have. I did a fake buy earlier, right, in order to change these numbers. But the way that works is you make sure you're connected to Matic, which is Polygon. Then you click on addresses and you select the address that you want to bring in, and then it will bring in the actual amount of tokens and the actual amount of debt for the account and pull that in for the calculations. So start over, click that, brings in the pricing data, okay? And let's go with 100 there. Okay, let's explain a little bit more. So when you click these, it's subscribing to the prices going up and down. It's telling you how much to buy, both in terms of quantity of ETH and US dollar value. Because if I go to Instadap and do it, it's not going to liquidate. So this is an error in it. And I know that it's scary to do this with the error, which is why we are saying we are here, right? And just go to Instadap and do these things on Instadap on their website if you have any concerns about doing it. But this is the same as their leverage, right? So if you go to Instadap, they have their leverage, right? So what it's doing is it's borrowing DAI. You can't select USDC yet. The collateral is ETH. It's set up exactly this, right? You choose leverage, and then you have this, and then you go over and it tells you how much to buy right there. So let's copy this. This is looking up this account, which does not have 100 ETH. So it actually is correct in telling me that the position will liquidate, because it would. This account doesn't have the assets to do that. So the error is actually correct. I made a mistake in explaining it. But let's say that there was an error, right? Just because I'm making this video, so now you're prepared, right? So if I paste that in there, it's gonna tell me the same thing, that it's gonna liquidate, right? So I can't do it. That's how you would do it if you run into any issues on ours, right? Otherwise, here's what happens. The leverage is right here, collateral swap is there. The difference between leverage and a collateral swap is, are you borrowing DAI or are you withdrawing DAI, right? So if you're doing simple strategy number 2, which is borrowing and resupplying in order to have a net gain in stablecoins, show you this account, which is doing it. So this account is borrowing DAI, resupplying DAI, and it's getting 14.5% net APY for doing it. There's another video that will explain why that is, but that's what's going on. If you are doing that inside of your multiplying account, which this is with USDC, borrowing and resupplying USDC, right? Then you could take from the supplied USDC and buy more ETH with it, as opposed to borrowing more and buying ETH with it, right? And so that's the difference. So when you're on here, if you already have DAI supplied as collateral, you could do a collateral swap. If you are not doing strategy number 2, you can do leverage, which borrows the DAI, right? And so you have both buttons right here. This right here is the amount to buy, which is right there. And this gets updated based on the price getting updated. And the price getting updated is based on what is available to us. That should be pretty accurate. And as what that means is that once you're set up, you can literally just wait on this page, leave this page open. And then whenever it's time to buy, you click the collateral swap to buy, because I'm assuming that you would also be doing, strategy number 2. And so if you're doing that, then it's a collateral swap to buy. And we're trying to set up the absolute best default values we can, so that people who don't quite understand how to change these things, that they just have a good default one to begin with. But what I want to point out is the default rules when I put it on Aave, which this is not an Aave account, so let's refresh this. The thing that I wanted to point out is the current price is below what the default value is. So for Aave, you would want to change those details into a price spectrum that you think makes more sense, because 25% of the historic max price of Aave is about right now, right? So it's declined 75% since its all-time high. And that is below what the default line is. So this is one that you would want to change if you were to do Aave. These three should all work for the default ones. Aave is the one that you would want to change. Yeah, so that's how you start using it, right? Is you either do it on here where you put in your real data and then you click either the leverage if you're not doing strategy number 2 or collateral swap if you are doing strategy number 2, and you just click that every time the price changes, right? And I shouldn't say every time the price changes, right? We put this in here, the difference between 25.84 and 26.40 or whatever, $60 difference is probably not enough to take a profit on. You could, right? But you probably want to wait to like $200 swing on ETH before you take a profit, maybe more. But either way, you wait till the price changes up or down, and then you click the button, and that's it. One button, right? So the hardest thing in all of this is understanding it. Second hardest thing is getting it all set up, which is the point of the simple journey. The easiest part of it is after you understand what to do, it's all set up, is just wait, click the button. Wait, click the button. Wait, click the button. That's it. Once it's all set up, right? So this is why this is the simple journey. This is why you got to understand all these other prerequisites and get things going. We are having a much more polished version, right? That is coming. That'll be much, much better on getting this, right? Done is better than perfect is the way that we're looking at it, right? Minimum features. Let's get it going. Let's launch our token. Let's launch our NFTs. Let's launch all the things. It's working. We're getting positive ROIs, returns on using the strategy. We're building up the community, right? Our Discord's growing every single day. We're getting new users. And so it's a growing, thriving community. And it's just a matter of time until we have it as the full whole product solution. It will take some time, but we are working aggressively to make that happen. Thank you for watching this whole series of videos, and I hope you are able to multiply your tokens using CiMPLE. Please like the video, subscribe, and if there's anything in this video that you think we could be doing better, please let us know in the comments and we will redo this video pre-addressing those issues that you write about in the comments. Thank you for contributing. Hope you start multiplying. I hope you do very, very well at it. Thank you.